All right, let's get started. We still have good community members joining us, and everybody's very welcome. I know also that not everybody is able to make it today. That's what it's like to be living in pretty much all time zones on our wonderful planet. So we are recording this session as always, and the recording is made available afterwards to all of you and everybody who couldn't be here now. Let's get started, and welcome to the Disrupt workshop in the Educate for Life sprint. It's a big milestone for us, and I'm going to talk more about that later. And we have come far, and we have a lot more that needs to be done as part of this sprint. We'll also get to that a little bit later. As you are starting to learn or already figured out, we enjoy some musical inspiration to open up our mind every time we do a session like this. And it's good to take us out of our daily operational mindset where we are solving problems, putting out fires, and being busy at work and at home. When we want to focus on designing the future of something, and we are designing the future of education, then it's a good thing to play a bit of inspiring music first to get us in the right mindset and the right mode. Just muting again, everybody. And there we go. So I'm now going to steal about 10 minutes of your time playing some music, but it's worth it. And you may all know this piece of very inspiring work. Even if you do, see it as a great opportunity to do some reflection on what you have learned so far in the sprint and your current plans on where you want to take your ideas next. So spend the next almost 10 minutes in a reflective mode, seek inspiration and find ways to dive deeper into this inspiration while you listen to the music. I'm sure you will agree with me that it's 10 minutes well spent. So let's get started enjoying this piece first. And then I'll be back to introduce the agenda for the rest of the workshop, and then we'll dive into the world of disruption and the future of education altogether. So welcome everybody, and I look forward to enjoy the next couple of hours with you and take our plans to the next level. So see you in a bit after this piece of music.
I wanted to be a rock star. I dreamed of it, and that's all I dreamed of. I should be more accurate. I wanted to be a pop star. This was in the late 80s. And mostly I wanted to be the fifth member of Depeche Mode or Duran Duran. They wouldn't have me. I didn't read music, but I played synthesizers and drum machines. And I grew up in this little farming town in northern Nevada, and I was certain that's what my life would be. And when I went to college at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, when I was 18, I was stunned to find that there was not Pop Star 101 or even a degree program for that interest. And the choir conductor there knew that I sang and invited me to come and join the choir. And I said, yes, I would love to do that, sounds great. And I left the room and said, no way. The choir people in my high school were pretty geeky, and there was no way I was going to have anything to do with those people. And about a week later, a friend of mine came and said, listen, you've got to join choir. At the end of the semester, we're taking a trip to Mexico, all expenses paid, and the soprano section is just full of hot girls. And so I figured for Mexico and babes, I could do just about anything. And I went to my first day in choir, and I sat down with the basses and sort of looked over my shoulder here to see what they were doing. They opened their scores, the conductor gave the downbeat, and boom, they launched into the Kyrie from the Requiem by Mozart. And my entire life I had seen in black and white, and suddenly everything was in shocking Technicolor. The most transformative experience I've ever had in that single moment, hearing dissonance and harmony, and people singing, people together, this shared vision. And I felt for the first time in my life that I was part of something bigger than myself. And there were a lot of cute girls in the soprano section, as it turns out. I decided to write a piece for choir a couple of years later as a gift to this conductor who had changed my life. I had learned to read music by then, or slowly learning to read music. And that piece was published. And then I wrote another piece, and that got published. And then I started conducting, and I ended up doing my master's degree at the Juilliard School. And I find myself now in the unlikely position of standing in front of all of you as a professional classical composer and conductor. Well, a couple of years ago, a friend of mine emailed me a link, a YouTube link, and said, "You have got to see this." And it was this young woman who had posted a fan video to me singing the soprano line to a piece of mine called Sleep.
Hi, Mr. Eric Whitaker. My name is Britland Lucy, and this is a video that I'd like to make for you. Here's me singing Sleep. I'm a little nervous, just to let you know.
I was thunderstruck. Britland was so innocent and so sweet, and her voice was so pure. And I even loved seeing, behind her, I could see the little teddy bear sitting on the piano behind her in her room. Such an intimate video. And I had this idea, if I could get 50 people to all do this same thing, sing their part, soprano, alto, tenor, and bass, wherever they were in the world, post their videos to YouTube, we could cut it all together and create a virtual choir. So I wrote on my blog, OMG, OMG. I actually wrote OMG, hopefully for the last time in public ever. And I sent out this call to singers, and I made free the download of the music to a piece that I'd written in the year 2000 called Lux Aurumque, which means light and gold. And lo and behold, people started uploading their videos. Now, I should say before that, what I did is I posted a conductor track of myself conducting, and it's in complete silence when I filmed it, because I was only hearing the music in my head, imagining the choir that would one day come to be. Afterwards, I played a piano track underneath so that the singers would have something to listen to. And then as the videos started to come in, this is Cheryl Ang from Singapore. This is Evangelina Etienne from Massachusetts. Stephen Hansen from Sweden. This is Jamal Walker from Dallas, Texas. There was even a little soprano solo in the piece, and so I had auditions. And a number of sopranos uploaded their parts. I was told later, and also by lots of singers who were involved in this, that they sometimes recorded 50 or 60 different takes until they got just the right take. They uploaded it. Here's our winner of the soprano solo. This is Melody Myers from Tennessee. I love the little smile she does right up at the top of the note, like, yeah, no problem, everything's fine. And from the crowd emerged this young man, Scott Haynes, and he said, listen, this is the project I've been looking for my whole life. I'd like to be the person to edit this all together. I said, thank you, Scott. I'm so glad that you found me. And Scott aggregated all of the videos. He scrubbed the audio. He made sure that everything lined up. And then we posted this video to YouTube about 1.5 years ago. This is Lux Arumque, sung by the virtual choir. I'll stop it there in the interest of time. Thank you. No, thank you. Thank you. So there's more. There's more. Thank you so much. And I had the same reaction you did. I actually was moved to tears when I first saw it. I just couldn't believe how the poetry of all of it. These souls all on their own desert islands, sort of sending electronic messages in bottles to each other. We just closed submissions January 10th, and our final tally was 2,051 videos from 58 different countries. Thank you. From Malta, Madagascar, Thailand, Vietnam, Jordan, Egypt, Israel, as far north as Alaska and as far south as New Zealand. And we also put a page on Facebook for the singers to upload their testimonials, what it was like for them, their experience singing it. And I've just chosen a few of them here. My sister and I used to sing in choirs together constantly. Now she's an airman in the Air Force, constantly traveling. It's so wonderful to sing together again. I love the idea that she's singing with her sister. Aside from the beautiful music, it's great just to know I'm part of a worldwide community of people I never met before, but who are connected anyway. And my personal favorite, when I told my husband that I was going to be a part of this, he told me that I did not have the voice for it. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of you have heard that too. Me too. It hurt so much, and I shed some tears, but something inside of me wanted to do this despite his words. Is a dream come true to be part of this choir, as I've never been part of one. When I placed a marker on the Google Earth map, I had to go with the nearest city, which is about 400 miles away from where I live. As I am in the great Alaskan bush, satellite is my connection to the world. So two things struck me deeply about this. The first is that human beings will go to any lengths necessary to find and connect with each other. It doesn't matter the technology. And the second is that people seem to be experiencing an actual connection. It wasn't a virtual choir that there are people now online, they're friends, they've never met, but I know myself too, I feel this virtual esprit de corps, if you will, with all of them. I feel a closeness to this choir, almost like a family.
We'll stop here in the interest of time. There's a video which is like 3 minutes longer. That also shows the next generation of this virtual choir, which is several thousand people joining and singing together. It's absolutely a stunning example of what has already happened, how people from their individual islands and the Alaskan bush and everywhere else connect because they want to connect, because they have a shared purpose and shared passions, and they want to do this together. So this shows that these things are possible. Yes, technology is there as an enabler, but it's definitely something else that connects people and there's a lot more to this than just technology. And out of this choir came a community, as you can hear Eric talk about, that connects them all also a long time after they actually did this virtual choir. So I had to make sure that all of you have come across the virtual choir on your journey, and now you have, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you will refer back to it in everything you try to do. I saw it as a remarkable example on how people connect and make things happen together that they are all deeply connected to. So welcome again to the Disrupt workshop at Educate for Life. I'm so excited to see so many of you here. You are joining regardless of time and time zones and at crazy hours, and you have done amazing work already when you have been describing your initial ideas to us. And today we will have a look together at these ideas, present them to each other, provide the first live feedback to you. And we are also, which is a very important part of this, we are also trying to disrupt our own thinking, disrupt the way that we see the world and we think about what we are trying to build. And we all learn very quickly that every time we try to disrupt ourselves and everything we do, the solutions that come out of that is always so much more impactful, and we connect so much deeper to the project. And I hope you will all get to experience this feeling, if you haven't done already, in the coming weeks as part of the sprint. So the virtual choir was an example of what a community can achieve, and we also in Educate for Life are a pretty amazing community, and we can achieve many things together for the future of education. We're just getting started, and this thing doesn't stop with the sprint. it has so much energy and potential to carry on, but this was just a first example of what a community can achieve. I just wanted here to quickly introduce you to the agenda. I will just continue a little bit longer to introduce you to the world of disruption. And then I will ask those of you who have submitted ideas in Sway to introduce them to the rest of us by spending a couple of minutes, roughly, introducing each of the ideas to the rest of us. This is just to get a good understanding amongst all of us about what are the type of ideas that you are working on, and that helps us to provide you with feedback, get you connected to people that can be of additional help, and it helps us to help you on planning your next steps. After that, we have a disrupt presentation, and I just have the amazing privilege of being able to introduce again to you Raya Bidshahri, CEO and founder of Academy. And she was with us back in December last year. So for those of you who were part of the community at that time, already met Raya on a call, and now you have the privilege of meeting Raya again today. After that, we will spend some time on providing live feedback to each other. This is going to be limited by the time allocated to this call, but we will get started together as a community to provide feedback to each other. And this is also supplemented by separate feedback calls that every one of you and your teams can request from me. And I'm more than happy to dedicate time to meet with each team to provide much deeper feedback to each of you for inspiration, for you to consider for your next steps on this sprint journey. You can schedule calls with me, and the information on how to do that is already posted in your sprint group in our platform. At the end, I'm going to explain what's going to happen in the rest of the sprint. And then we will, I'm sure, have some questions and try to answer them together. So this is the agenda for the rest of the session today, or this evening, depending on where you are. So I'm going to do this briefly so we can spend more time on your great work. But it's very important for those of you who are relatively new to the sprint, and maybe as a reminder to all of us, that actually we are pretty much halfway through this Educate for Life sprint. The first part of the sprint was what we call the awakening. It's about allowing us to research and discover what's really possible today that wasn't possible maybe even a few years ago, thanks to technology, thanks to new business models and a new mindset maybe that allows us to do new things in new ways. This is for us to use as inspiration when we design the future of education altogether. So that's the discovery, the awakening. After that, we have been spending a lot of time in the ideate phase. The ideate phase is where you in teams have been ideating. You have probably also, I know many of you have been experimenting, and some are just getting started. That is absolutely fine. You need to test your ideas before we start building them in the last part of the sprint. Test ideas, improve ideas before we start building them. And I'll get back later to what happens after today. But this is what we have done so far. A lot of research, a lot of ideation, some experimentation, some testing of ideas, and a lot more to come. The ideate, the awaken, the ideate phase shall continue and actually shall never stop. So please never stop doing this, regardless of what you do in life, and also after the sprint finishes. We have, in our research phase, been discovering a lot of massive challenges in the world of education, regardless of what type of education we're interested in. There's so many challenges at grand scale. And just one example, where Fabrizio Hochschild here from, he's a UN Assistant Secretary General. He talks about significant increase of global investments in education is needed, and that's probably true. But I also want to challenge the approach in general, because are we investing in more of the same, or more that is just incrementally better? So, and I wanna just discuss a few definitions first, and you are very welcome to disagree with the definitions, but I find these definitions super simple and easy to relate to. So please bear with me while I introduce to you the few definitions for today. The first one is innovation. When we talk about innovation, one simple way of defining that I like very much, and here presented by David Roberts from Singularity University, he talked about innovation as about doing the same things but better, right? So if we take a certain curriculum or a certain way of teaching, or certain type of doing the same thing but try to do it better, we can talk about that as innovation. The next level of that can be to do new things, not do the same things, but do new things. We hope always to do things better and to do new things as well. And that brings me to the on the right hand of the screen here that David shows the definition of disruption. Disruption in his definition is about doing new things that make the old things obsolete. And we have never had better opportunities to do that if we want to. But and coming from a starting point which is we don't understand why we have to group kids of the same age to learn the same things at the same pace, for example. If that's the challenge we want to address, we might be able to do whole new things that make that old classroom teaching obsolete because of inspiring models coming also from other industries today, because of emerging technologies and so many other disruptive factors that we can consider. We have the power, if we want to do new things that make the old things obsolete. I'm not saying we have to disrupt things. We also have the opportunity to innovate things and to build new things. All of this is added value, in my opinion. Uh, but I see Educate for Life as that safe playground where we can experiment with disruption that will make things exponentially better, significantly better, uh, and with a positive impact on our lives and our coming generations. I just wanted to share these definitions and give you the hope and belief that we can do this. We can actually make things a lot better, and we can make new things that make the old things obsolete. So feedback that I like to give to everyone will probably be on the right side of this continuum, which is, can we rethink this? Can we disrupt the old way of doing things? Because I have personally found it challenging to change things in the educational system. I have tried, and I know many of you have. I find it really inspiring to do things on the edge and try to do entirely new things that make the old things obsolete. You get the point, and I know you have also done quite a bit of research, many of you, on technologies. Technology is not everything, and technology is just the enabler. And at least that's my opinion. However, it does give us tremendous opportunity and potential for doing new things in new ways. And if you see some of these indicators of where different technologies are headed, I encourage you to look at the gray curve, which shows also, it mentions next generation education. And I don't know what that means, but I would love to be part of creating it. And I believe you're all here because you would like to be part of creating that as well. So and we do meet a lot of amazing people around the world who are trying to do something in this space. And community is about getting together around doing this together. And we have interesting technologies that can help us on that path and on that journey. And this is just to show that if we continue the way we have done in the past and continue to do more of the same, invest more money in doing the same things a little bit better, we are on the linear path here. It's very predictable, which means it's safe. We feel comfortable doing it because we can predict what we're going to get out of it. We might get grades that are 5 or 10% better at the end of the year. And we know that more students might graduate or might learn to read and write. But it's a linear path, and it's not, there's, in my opinion, no chance that we can close the growing skill gaps that we see in our world by continuing on the linear path here. I believe we have to ride on the red curve here, the exponential curve, which also introduces a lot of uncertainty and unpredictability, and just the fact that, for example, exponential technologies of different types can give us that exponential boost in price performance and radically different solutions. It allows us to do entirely new things in new ways, but it comes with a lot of surprise to everybody in the education space and even to ourselves, unpredictable. And this is why we have to start to think differently and be comfortable with uncertainty and uncomfortable with experimentation. It is the best way forward by far. And this is just a little visual to show the difference between linear and exponential. And there's a very commonly used example. If you take 30 steps and each step is 1 meter, you can quickly figure out when you have gone half the way, or three-fourths of the way to 30 meters. You can predict and you can estimate, and you have a pretty good grasp at the metrics here. But if you look and think exponentially around this, if your first step is 1 meter, the next step is 2 meters, 4 meters, 8, and so on. Actually, when you do the math, the 30 exponential steps takes you more than 26 trips around the world, which is kind of mind-blowing. And there's a number of factors we can play with to actually leverage exponentiality and bring that into our ideas. And this is what we are here to help you to do in this process. Change is super hard. It is super difficult, which is why most people refuse to be part of change. It's really not fun doing it, but those who have tried to change for the better know how fantastic it is once it's done. So we cannot stop trying to do it. But not changing is fatal. And I think an important message to the world has to be about this, that if we don't change direction, we will have even bigger challenges in the future to deal with. Of course, I have not been to the British pub where this photo was taken, but I used it anyway. It says, if you're scared of change, leave it here. I found it funny. And it's usually a good icebreaker, because of course we're all scared of change, but we have to leave it behind. We have to, and we have to support each other when we feel scared and when we feel uncertain, and this is what a community is for. Life is short, build stuff that matter. This is very, very important to remember. And if your day looked like this, then you've had an amazing day. Be curious, be happy for no reason, fight tirelessly for what you want. This is what children do every single day. This is what we have to remember and keep doing. And I do a lot of disruption workshops. Today we're doing a very short format and a virtual one. But usually when I work in sprints with different types of clients, can be large corporations, can be governments, can be other types of clients, we run a full day disruption workshop. And we bring in disruptors intentionally to challenge every idea that is being presented to them, take it apart and help to put it back together again, but now with the mindset of exponentiality, exponential and positive impact on the world, and how can we serve much more students and do it 10 times cheaper, faster, better than the original version of the idea. And a big part of this is essentially to teach adults to do exactly what the kids are really good at. It's about, hey, do your experimentation, go and test your idea. And this is what kids do, and we are actually educating adults to do the same now as part of the OpenExo ecosystem. So I wanted to just leave one disruptive thought with you. And there are many more examples that I could share, but we need to move on in the agenda also. One thing to take as an example today is Starbucks. And when I say Starbucks, I'm sure you think about coffee. Starbucks also happens to be actually the third largest fast food restaurant chain in the world, with the latest number I could find was more than 29,000 locations. So it's about food, it's about coffee, right? And we know that it's a massive chain, and we know what it stands for. But what if Starbucks decided to be the largest school chain rather than a coffee chain? Have you ever thought about that? What would the world look like, or what would that mean to the educational system, to the existing schools at all levels, whether elementary school, universities, everybody? What would that really mean? And isn't probably not impossible that it could happen. I don't know if Starbucks have this kind of plans, uh, but I spent a lot of time in China for a lot of good reasons. And if I go into Starbucks in China, this is actually a very normal thing to see. You see students sitting all day working with each other on their school assignments. And Starbucks actually adjusted their global blueprint for Starbucks cafes in China. They said, hey, we need to make our venues larger. We need to allow everybody to recharge their phones, their laptops while they're here. We wanted to stay all day, and we'll make the decorations more like at home, so you feel relaxed, enjoy the atmosphere, and you spend all day here, and you eat our food, and drink our coffee. Uh, and I know there are some interesting ideas actually coming out of this that actually relates to the education space. So I just wanted you to leave with that way of seeing things. Don't see things as they have been, but try to see things as they can be. Here's an example of students sitting all day, essentially plugged into the power outlet, and with a continuous stream of coffee, ready to keep learning. I also always use this image, first of all, because I love kids, but also because what we see is life expectancy being radically increasing, and some of the predictors right now points at 120 years of average lifespan for humans in relatively few years from now. This photo keeps reminding me about some scientists that believe it's possible that the first human being to live to 1,000 years is born. I don't know if this is going to be hold true or not. I'm just saying things are happening. Our way of working with DNA and eliminate diseases is quite remarkable. Many changes are happening in this space. So what's going to happen in the space of education, let's say 100 years from now, or 200 years from now, if people live to be several hundred years old? This is also important to remember. And then a piece of disruption of the banks. This is Chase in the middle, their financial offerings. And if you look at this way, you can see Amazon in this case actually have offerings today that can totally disrupt the need for banks. They can serve every possible role that banks have been serving in the past. I don't see any arrows to the mortgage and home equity, but apart from that, seems that you could see Amazon as the future of banking. So we want to design the future of education, and I think there's a great potential for us to do that. There's also a lot of challenges. Internal politics and organizational culture are some of the biggest challenges. We all know that. Because failure is not accepted, ideas from outside is not accepted, and this is Gardner confirming this as well. We all know that very well from our everyday life. And our existing organizations on the left side of what you see here, they are existing models that are based on plans, on execution, and predictable models. We want to know what we achieve every single year. It's important to know that for us. But what I'm encouraging you to do is be on the right-hand side of this continuum, the invention side. But then we have to leave execution and planning behind and start searching, start experimenting, learning, and then keep adjusting. And this is the approach for every one of you, and this is what our assignments are asking you to do. So this is just a reminder. Let's stay in the search mode and experimentation mode. Let's not interrupt the person doing what others say cannot be done. And you're the ones doing it, so don't let anybody tell you not to try to do this, right? Just charge on and do this. This is a bit of a funny movie. We also have our internal immune system that tells us some terrible stories that we cannot do it. You're not good enough, you're not strong enough, you don't have the resources, they will get you down and so on. But actually, if we tell ourselves a positive story and support each other, we can achieve anything we want. I'm just about to the end of this part of the session, but I also wanted to share this slide here. Don't ask kids what they want to be when they grow up, but what problems do they want to solve? It's a whole different paradigm. It's a different way of seeing the future and getting prepared for it. So it changes the conversation from who do I want to work for, and now it's about what do I need to learn to be able to do that. It empowers us. And I hope everything you try to do in your ideas is about empowering others. Always check for the empowerment factor. Many have experienced some failures on the way to success, and these famous names all slipped and made wrong decisions, and you're all going to make a lot of wrong decisions, but as long as we keep testing through experimentation before we build, we can fail fast, we can learn, and we can have a pretty validated idea before we actually invest time and money into building your ideas. And one of the final recommendations here is from Steve Blank, and you've been watching his video in the assignments, I'm sure. He says, cheating on customer discovery interviews is like cheating in your parachute packing class. And I couldn't agree more. This means that don't cheat and don't ignore about going out and ask users. We cannot predict what's going to work. You have to get out there and ask others, present others to your ideas and ask for their feedback. There is no other way. And if you don't do it, it's like cheating in your parachute packing class, right? It's going to be a problem. So now it's time for you to present back to us. And I'd like those of you who have been proposing ideas or represent the teams behind the ideas to join me in introducing each of the ideas. And then we will we'll move forward. I'm going to share my screen here of Sway and the ideas, and I'd like those of you who represent the idea to unmute yourself and give us a few minutes of introduction to the idea. And we'll spend a bit of time to do this, mainly to give us all an understanding of what your ideas are about, what you're trying to do, and that helps us to provide you with more detailed feedback also after this session. So I'm now switching over to Sway. Just a moment here, and then we'll get into this. And in the order of simply the random order of the ideas here, we have Justina featuring here in quite many ideas, but I know that obviously you have a team as part of this.
Precisely.
And so who would love to go first? Tell us about the workshops for social emotional learning.
If I may just give some structure, it's me and Laurence, who is the group leader, and has put hers was the biggest input, and I'm sure that she's going to talk about many ideas. But the first one that is that you're having on your screen is one by Sabine. I'm not sure if Sabine is there. Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yes.
So yeah, maybe we'll go with Sabine. Then the following are Laurent's ideas, and then the finishing ones are ones that were mine. So what do you say, Laurence? Would you like to introduce Sabine's idea, or do you leave the floor to me?
Please go on, and I will take over the next one.
All right. So I'm really glad to present Laurent's amazing group, After School Entrepreneurship, which I believe is one that is aiming to not only take part of the future education, but also the future making economy. We've had many ideas. It was difficult to choose the best one, and so you will hear about quite a few ones that maybe will overlap, but we'll be happy to hear about your feedback about to each of them. So the first idea, the workshop for social emotional learning, is an idea from Sabine, who is working in a diplomatic consultancy body to a UN. So she really knows what are the policies for the educational field, and what she aimed for in her own project, and I'm sure that she will deliver it brilliantly thanks to her very strong network, is precisely to empower teens and kids through workshops for social emotional learning. Sabine speaks about the very appealing need for what we all agree on getting out of the front teaching and going closer to more softer skills. And she does advocate for organizing training teachers and parents in social emotional learning in children. I think she is kind of, Lars, you will maybe agree, also on the border with your group, non-neurotypical learners. Maybe we can think about ways of cooperation there, but yeah, that is Sabine's idea. There we go. Laurence, I'm so happy you're here.
So maybe I can go on with the next idea, but first of all, let's tell us our MTP, our first draft MTP. I'm sure it will change along the project, along the sprint. So our MTP is empower kids and teens through a global entrepreneurship tribe. So what we think is that the best way to learn is not in a classroom frontal with a teacher in front of you, but learning by doing, working on your own projects, and in an environment where adults are only coaches, enabling you, helping you, adults you can go to enlarge your own network. And so here's the first idea: matching teams with mentors. The mechanism would be like a dating platform where teams of children running a project fill out a profile describing the project, the team, the language, etc. And on the other side, we would have a pool of volunteer adults with different profile, like for sure entrepreneurs, but also craft persons, retired persons, teachers, psychologists, whatever, people able to provide expertise, to coach a team. So in these ideas, the goal is to build a platform where we can match children teams with potential mentors. Shall we go to the next idea? So here's the map with partner network. Here's the idea would have to have like a Google map filled out by us with local shops and associations, etc., where you can run your ideas. So here's our purpose is to help people locally to enlarge their network. So sometimes you live in a city and don't know there is an innovation lab in your neighborhood or in the next neighborhood. So it would be a map with all kind of offerings able to help children running own projects. The other idea, I cannot read the title completely.
Lars, if you could scroll down, yeah. Network of companies.
Click it here, yeah.
Community.
It's, yeah, let me just scroll down here.
If you could just show the title.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, we need to talk to Sushan. Here. So empower kids and teens through community chat with peers, project videos from other teams, guides and templates.
Yes, here actually it was we were inspired by an initiative that someone else in the community posted in the community. It was really interesting. I don't remember the name now, but we think we should either cooperate with this initiative or do something like this, provide reference cases to the children all over the world. So project group describing their own project in a short video in order to inspire the next generation of children running such kind of project. And here we, during the exploring phase, we discovered a lot of really amazing initiatives already in place. And here I think the best way would be to partner with them instead of copying and doing the same thing again. There are really a lot of initiatives exactly for this target group children and teenagers with the goal to foster entrepreneurship spirit.
Excellent.
Here the idea called a network of volunteer companies open for immersion trips. This is something linked to the map. The goal is to provide locally partners here, companies or entrepreneurs willing to host children groups and to show their business. Here the idea is not learning by doing, but learning in immersion. So not just speaking about business, but seeing how it runs, and to have the possibility to ask questions to the founders, to the employees. So to be in the middle, in the middle of a business, not just hearing about business. And the last one, empower kids and teens through an aggregated platform. Here again, through our or during our exploring phase, we could find a lot of great offerings, but mainly in English. And when I think of French people, for example, at the age of 10 or 12, French children are not always able to run a project in English, and France is just an example. So here our dream will be to find something to be able to aggregate all those offerings, so to have a partner network, and to be able to translate part of their website in order to have a local platform in each country. So I think that's what it was. Justina, do you want to speak about the last one?
Yeah, I may go on. WeCat is an idea that is linked to the maps idea, and also to the network of companies that Laurence was speaking about before. We are still pretty broad with our ideas, but it's coming. The empty idea of this idea is to come out of the classroom, given that even the extracurricular activities, that those activities that concentrate on children's interests, are still adult-led and still limit kids' intrinsic motivation. It is our dream to raise the awareness of building a village, giving them the future. Probably will slowly get out into a Starbucks precisely, rather than remain within the structure of schooling systems. So we would like to create a brand for the community, starting with a campaign raising awareness of the importance of building a village. The campaign that would be addressed to schools, parents, and communities, and then build upon the potential of the aforementioned ones for the good of the kids. Within the communities, the business catch for the companies would be the CSR. And the marketing branding of their activities that would be open for the kids through their teachers or parents, guidance towards the opportunities where kids could realize their own projects. So it is very much like we do Starbucks, looking for places where kids could come and freely explore their ideas. out of the classroom. All right, brand the community with in invitations. The brand would be like on the door of spaces that would open up for the kids' activities. Then there's two books. One from after school entrepreneurship, and the other one from another group I was cooperating with, the non-neurotypical learners. Both of them being a bridge to new technologies. The book from after school entrepreneurship being a bridge to virtual reality, and a book on self-regulation being a bridge to wearables. So let me talk about those together, if you allow me. We have, as we have seen in our own research, in this project, in the sprint, but also outside it, the knowledge of what skills will be needed in the future, what jobs are foreseen for the future, and are really wide known. We also know, and we are living more and more conscious lives. As you were saying, Lars, the exponential growth doesn't only mean the growth in technology, but also shift in paradigms within the society. And one of those shifts, one of those paradigm shifts that I am observing, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, is a shift towards more conscious lives, more mindful lives. And I feel that it's a pity that us adults, having all those tools at hand, we do not share. And I would feel strongly, I find it as one of my strongest interests to share it with kids, given that, given my psychology background, and given that I see what emotional literacy does to my own kids. So the idea is to provide a very kids-oriented fiction that would guide towards popular science elements, and allow, in the book, allow the kids to dive into the elements of future jobs. The story is about three early teens who find an actual physical book that then transfers them to a virtual reality adventure. Within the book itself, there's the book is in an innovative form, because the book itself works on three scenarios that present three different sets of skills with the popular science elements, documentary elements of the book. Those three scenarios bring, depending on the answer to the question that the child chooses, bring the child to a different page. Then this is, I know it sounds complicated, but really in my scheme, in my scenario, it's all very clear. This links to a virtual reality adventure that depends the adventure, and also has an amazing opportunity of upgrading the future jobs that the book describes in a way faster way, because definitely it's easier to upgrade an application or a virtual reality game than an actual book. Bridge to wearables. The book about self-regulation that I would like to develop for, and I was discussing in the group of non-neurotypical learners, is a bridge to wearables. We are, and we will discuss this, we will have this idea discussed later on as well. We are already getting ready to present wearables as a way of regulating emotional states to foster and to facilitate the cognitive potential of kids. And my question is, why jump if we can take steps? And that being a first step, as we spoke of you spoke of disruption as taking steps that are getting as faster and faster. I would like it to be the first step. And with a similar structure, a book on self-regulation, mindfulness, and meditation would bring kids further to introduce the wearables. And I think that there is a pretty nice business catch for the developers of virtual reality apps and games, as well as wearables, that could make it happen. Thank you very much. I'm not taking more of others' time. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Justina and Lawrence. Very inspiring. And for everybody else, I'm sure many can see some synergies in connecting and discussing these initiatives across teams as well, maybe consolidating ideas or refining ideas together. Great. So I want to make sure that we have time to get Raya to present to us, and time is flying. So I want to propose Raya to join us now, and then we'll get back to introduce the rest of the ideas after Raya has been presenting her disruptive recommendations. And I know some have to leave and some have to join, but thank you very much for the introduction of the first ideas here. We'll get back to introduce the rest of them after we hear Raya present. And no problem, Justina. It was very inspiring to hear. So let me call on Raya. I can see Raya here. So let me give a brief introduction to Raya, and then we'll all be inspired by your work. So I'm just sharing my screen here.
Okay.
Yeah, here we go. So, and those of you who, as I said, have been in our community since the last part of last year, you have already met Raya Bidshahri, and CEO of Academy, in one of our first community calls. And I captured this screen dump from Raya's presentation in December. So sorry if you're using it again, Raya, today. But I just love this quote by Buckminster Fuller, that we are called to be architects of the future, not its victims. And it's very important for me that we see ourselves that way. And I'll leave for all of you to check out Academy afterwards. And so we can hand over to Raya now to help us to see the world differently through the eyes of disruption. So Raya, thank you very much again for being here. It's late in Dubai, so I appreciate it very much that you're here.
No, thank you for having me. I'm excited to dive in. I'm just going to share my screen. Well, thank you for that introduction. For those of you who I'm meeting again, excited to be back. I'm really, really excited to hear more about how the ideas evolve. I think there's some really robust ideas coming up. And for those of you who didn't get to give me an overview, I've actually had a look through all the ideas that have been posted. So I kind of have a sense of what different people are working on. So I'll give a quick overview of what Academy is before diving into my presentation. Now, for those of you who heard my story early on, the reason I launched Academy was out of my own personal frustration with traditional education. I was always someone who loved learning, but absolutely hated school. And the more time I spent working on entrepreneurial projects, the more I saw a mismatch between what I needed to know versus what traditional education focuses on. So Academy, at Academy, we offer future-focused and wisdom-based curriculum for high schools. So we have an online platform, but we also have an offline programming like workshops and boot camps. And we teach young minds all the skills, mindsets, and values that are not covered in traditional education. So these include things like ethical use of technologies. They include things like life, love, and death, moonshot thinking, creativity, innovation, entrepreneurship, and much more. We also have an educators platform where teachers can get up to speed with the emerging trends in education. And we've also worked with a lot of governments as ministries of education as well. We're only 2 years old, but we're learning a lot. We're an award-winning team. We just won the largest educational award in the Middle East, and have some exciting partnerships in the works as well. But enough about us. I want to take some time to talk about our underlying philosophies, but also some lessons of disruption that we've learned. Now, as Lars pointed out, and as I'm sure everyone here in the ecosystem is familiar, we are really going through what we call exponential growth. Now this is a buzzword we like to use, and very few of us actually intuitively grasp what it means. Our brains have evolved to think in linear terms and not in exponential terms. So we're used to thinking of things in that straight line as opposed to the exponential curve. And as Lars's analogy points out, 30 linear steps will give you 30 meters away, 30 exponential steps will get you 26 times around the planet. And that's the power of exponential growth in technology. It's the reason that computers today are 100 million times more powerful than they were 50 years ago. It's also the reason that in the next 100 years, we won't see 100 years of human progress. We will see 20,000 years of human progress. So we need to be preparing our youth for 20,000 years of human progress in their lifetime. That is one of the biggest challenges I think that the education system, the ecosystem will have to solve. And one of the things I do is I go to schools and speak to students about this. It's the least I feel like someone can do to raise awareness amongst high school students of the world they're going into. And often what happens is some students disengage from the conversation because they think, okay, I'm not interested in technology. I don't want to learn how to code. This doesn't apply to me. But the reality is that it's having a radical impact on all fields. So in the arts, we're seeing artists create new works in virtual reality and novel mediums. That video that you shared, Lars, is an excellent example of how technology is transforming art and creativity. In transportation, we're seeing the rise of Uber ride-sharing apps, electric cars, self-driving cars. Even in medicine, we're seeing the rise of robotic surgery. So across all fields, we're seeing this, and each subfield will have to deal with how they educate their professionals in their ecosystem. And even more, we're seeing a radical impact on the future of work. So this call is an excellent example of the rise of the contingent workforce, right? We're seeing distributed teams from around the world. Very few students graduating from high schools today know how to do a call like this and know how to communicate in a digital setting or collaborate digitally. And that is a very valuable skill that you need to have. We're seeing that, yes, technological automation is taking over a lot of jobs, but we're also seeing the birth of completely novel industries, things that our youth are just not aware of. And we're also seeing the rise of the imagination age, because as artificial intelligence takes over the monotonous routine tasks, human beings are left to do more of the creative, higher ordered work. So that's going to shape the kind of skills that we need in the future workforce. Now, as you can see in this evolving landscape and this exponential trends, incremental changes in education are simply not enough. Doing things better is just not enough. We have an education system that was designed in the industrial era to create factory-style workers. It has been designed to teach whatever gives the best grades and best test scores. It teaches in isolated subjects and content knowledge and not in 21st century skills. Youth today are not prepared with the soft skills they need. They are not aware of how to ethically use these powerful technologies. They are not conscious of the kinds of jobs that are emerging. In many cases, they're not taught to use these digital tools to solve global challenges. So there's a lot of problems to be fixed. And I'll go into some mindsets I think we need to deploy in order to avoid incremental changes. But before that, I thought maybe, I've been in the edtech space for years now. Academy is not the first company that I've launched in this space. And I thought maybe for those of you who are coming into the education space, for the first time, maybe you were doing something else in other industries, I thought I could cover some of the 5 drivers that are impacting education. And these are actually drawn from a Future of Learning report that I can also share the link to later on as well. So, one of the first drivers is one that we're seeing across many other industries. It's automating choices. It has been said that whatever can be automated will be automated. Algorithms today are shaping everything in our lives, from what we see in our social media feeds, to the kind of music list we listen to the kind of recommendations we get on Netflix. Those are all shaped by algorithms that are kind of analyzing what we're doing and giving us personalized recommendation. We're going to see that in education as well. With the advancements of AI, one of the biggest trends is going to be personalization of education. So personalized learning playlists, personalized curriculum, catered to each and every learner, so they're not mass produced and they're not all learning exactly the same thing. The next trend is really something that I think Educate4Life is capturing, is what we're calling civic superpowers. So for the longest time, the people who had the most control over change were big corporations and massive governments and the departments and governments. But thanks to exponential technologies, thanks to trends such as decentralization and the sharing economy, individuals like us and small teams like us have the power to actually come up with disruptive ideas and solve global challenges. And what we're going to see is a kind of activism movement with entrepreneurs within the education space, as more parents, as more students and teachers demand a different kind of education in this ecosystem. And that's going to drive a lot of the change that we see. The third, I think, radical trend is actually going to be accelerating brains. If you paid attention to the curve that Lars shared, there were a lot of radical technologies in there. In the last few decades, we have managed to not just learn more about the human brain than in previous centuries, but we have actually been able to connect 3 brains together, control the brain of mice with lights, to even go as far as decoding imagery of a dream just from brainwaves. So, it's not outrageous to say that in our lifetime or in our children's lifetime, we will probably have cognitively enhancing neural implants. With the exponential growth, in that trend, that can actually be possible. So we all have to ask ourselves, what does education look like in that kind of a setting, in that kind of a future sci-fi-like setting? Now, even if you don't believe me, even if you don't buy that, one definite trend that we're seeing is that education is starting to get treated less like an art and more like in science. We're seeing the rise of what we call neuroscience and mind-brain education. So essentially, neuroscientists and educators are working together to understand brains and to understand how students learn best. So what's happening in the classroom or what edtech companies do needs to become increasingly aligned with the latest science of how students learn best. It's no longer about, oh, this feels right, or this is what I've been doing for the longest time. You need to ask yourselves, what is the latest science in the brain and learning? And how can we as a team keep our solutions aligned with that and up to date with that? The fourth trend is, involves going away from toxic narratives. So for really over a century, our current education model has told a flawed story. It has told students, you need to memorize these facts, you need to follow authority and rules, follow the structure, and that the grades that you get at the end and the certification that you get at the end is going to be a measure of your intelligence and a measure of your success. However, we now know that that's not the case. We now know that the SATs are not necessarily a good measure of your ability to take risks or your ability to solve problems in a real life setting. We know that grades don't necessarily capture your positive personality traits, the improvements that you've seen in the last couple of years, or even your curiosity and many other things. So we know that those stories and narratives are flawed. And what we need is new metrics of success, new definition of what education means, new methods of certification. And we have to completely change the story that we've been telling our children for over a century. And the final trend, again, kind of goes back to the future of work. We're seeing the rise of the gig economy. Over 1 billion people are coming onto the internet in the next few years. We're seeing digitization of the workforce, and that too is going to shape how we upskill future generations. So that's just a few of the trends that are evolving and are shaping the future of EdTech. Now, Jabin in the chat earlier, made a comment about how we need to have 10x and not 10%. And that really captures what I think is the most important principle for innovation. So that's actually called moonshot thinking. For those of you who aren't aware, moonshot thinking was proposed by Google. It's Google's idea for innovation. So Google has a wing called the Moonshot Factory. It's Google X. And their job is to just accelerate and incubate moonshot ideas. So examples of moonshot ideas that have come out of Google X include things like hot air balloon that's beaming free internet to the world, self-driving electric cars. Those are all examples of moonshot ideas. And in a world that is changing exponentially, we cannot simply have incremental changes in education. We need to have radical 10% improvements in the status quo. That is the only way we'll keep up. And a moonshot, according to Google, lies at the intersection of a huge challenge, radical solution, and breakthrough technology. So what are some examples of moonshot idea in education? A few of the tech-focused ones. We're seeing a lot of AI platforms in the edtech space come up with ways to personalize curriculum based on each learner's strengths, weaknesses, agility, and personality traits. And these are actual, like Cerigo, Sana Labs are examples of companies that are doing that. I'm personally very excited about virtual reality because I think it takes learning from an experience that's about transferring information to an experience that's about emotions and socializing and immersion. And that to me is an absolute 10x improvement in learning. So those are some examples. For us at Awe Academy, our moonshot is focused less on the technology and more on the curriculum. So we saw that a lot of companies were coming for 10x of the technology students were using, but the actual content that was being digitized was outdated. So we are focused on developing a 10x improvement in the kind of soft skills and the kind of values and themes that the content focuses on. So that's my first challenge for you. You're currently, all the teams are at a place where, you've done your first round of ideation and you're going to refine this or maybe completely overhaul it. So my first challenge to you, and please be honest with yourselves, is your idea or project a moonshot in education? Is this truly and honestly a 10% improvement in the status quo? Because if it is, it's not just a better for the world, but you are far more likely to get investments and get people on board if you're presenting something that is an absolute overhaul, dramatic improvement on current solutions or existing solutions. So that's the first question I have for you. But what I want to highlight, and this is where I disagree with Google, because Google has specified that moonshot thinking to them is mainly about technology. I don't really believe that's always the case. I think we also need moonshot thinking in policy, morals and values, curriculum, and even in mindsets. So in the education landscape at large, EdTech or educational startups are just one piece of the puzzle. You have ministries of education and policymakers, you have parents, you have the students themselves. All of these stakeholders are shaping the future of education. So, we can come up with all the moonshot ideas that we want, but if the policymakers are still, detrimenting success, or if the parents are still standing in the way of 10x, it's not going to move forward. So just kind of think about that as well as you're coming up with your solutions. And that's my next challenge for you. Disruption doesn't have to rely on technology alone. And I think this is something we often struggle convincing people in the ecosystem. Investors love hearing AI and blockchain and all those, incredible exponential technologies. But if you look at learning as an experience, I'm sure we've all been in a workshop or a classroom that was the best experience of our lives that didn't necessarily rely on technology. Sometimes it's really not about technology. But I was really excited to see in some of the solutions that you're not necessarily thinking of just integrating those buzzwords for the sake of it. Some of the solutions up there don't rely on technology, and that's totally okay. It can still be a moonshot idea without technology. And yeah, that's where, for us, we decided that we wanted our moonshot and 10x to focus on. And so we design curriculum that is interdisciplinary, that is focused on values and soft skills and ways of thinking, that is very future focused. And really in many ways, the future is now, so it's absolutely relevant. And this just captures some of the kinds of programming that we've evolved around. So anything from 21st century ethics all the way to 21st century skills and science and exponential technologies, we've designed all of this for high school and middle school students. And as you know, Lars pointed out that beautiful quote that we'd like to end our deck with. And what I'd like us to do is reimagine education in schools, not necessarily just as a place where we prepare young minds for the future of work, but a place where we inspire young minds to create the future, because that's ultimately what the purpose of education should be. So the next challenge I have for everyone is to ask yourself why you are doing this. This is such an important question, because if you don't have a convincing answer to this, your idea will not persist. Like, you know, I absolutely love what I do. It is my ikigai. It is my purpose. I would, you know, move heaven and earth to make our mission a reality. But I will be the first person to tell you that it is very, very difficult. Like, being an entrepreneur is difficult. You're constantly putting out fires. You're going, especially if you're a moonshot entrepreneur, you're doing a missionary sell. You're trying to convince the ecosystem that doesn't realize it needs your product, and, you know, added all the other uncertainties around it. And if you don't have a convincing answer to this question, you're going to give up. You're going, you know, if you can't answer the question at 2 a.m. in the morning, which is literally what time it is almost here, at 2 a.m. in the morning, when you ask yourself, why am I doing this? And you don't have a convincing answer, I urge you to reshift your focus right now to something that's convincing for you. And that this is what I'm saying to you is backed by decades of research. So some of you may be familiar, Simon Sinek, Start With Why. It's an excellent book to read before you develop your marketing plan. But essentially what he did, just to summarize, he and his team studied the most successful companies and entrepreneurs. And they found that the most successful ones weren't the ones that focused on innovating how they did what they did or what they do, but rather why they do it. And the most successful pitches are focused mostly on the why, because people actually don't buy how you do what you do or what you do, they buy why you do it. So that's something to remember. And, you know, the book itself is filled with tons of evidence and case studies of how this is the case. And from my own experience, this has been very valuable in pitching, because more often than not, when I speak to principals, when I speak to parents, they don't realize all of this. They don't realize where the future of work is headed, where exponential technologies is headed. So I can't just go to them and be like, this is our product. You know, I had to say, here are the problems in education. This is why we're doing this. And then tell them how we do what we do. And so I urge everyone not just to do that when you pitch, but actually find your why now and build everything else around that why. Because more often what will happen is, you know, big corporations will get huge, you know, they'll go from startup to scale up, and then they'll try to think, okay, what is our purpose? And I think that's the worst way to do it. The next challenge I have for you is that, you know, it's great to have a big vision. You have to have a 10x vision. But remember that your first product or offering will be very different from your final kind of vision 10 years down the line. And this is where I can share some of our own personal kind of vision. We, for us at All Academy, we're in it for, you know, the next 10 to 20 years. One day we want to have schools around the world that are doing things completely differently from schools today, like overhauling everything. However, we know we can't do that right now. We don't have the resources, the credibility, and the world isn't ready for that kind of overhaul just yet. So we kind of did a backwards planning and said, okay, where can we start where it's still exciting, where it's still new, but built towards that future vision that we have. And for us, our online platform, our workshops, our boot camps is where we're starting. So it's kind of like our first iteration of products towards gradually increasing and expanding our vision. So for example, with our offline offering, we started with 2-hour workshops. We recently did our 2-day boot camps, and now we're doing our first summer camp. And gradually we're fleshing it out into an entire full school curriculum that isn't just a supplement to education, but a replacement to education. So that's how we did it. Now I urge you to think along the same lines. You may have this dramatic vision for the future, which you should, kind of do a backwards planning and see where you can start with your current resources, with your current funding and current bandwidth, and build towards that. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with this. I think the lean startup cycle is an excellent process to deploy as you do this. As Lars mentioned earlier, test. Like test a very basic version of your offering before investing into like the $100,000 version and the $1 million version. And that's something we tried. We tried to do as well. The first version of our platform was a very basic version, nothing too fancy, built on WordPress, tested by 500 beta testers before we invested in a much more upgraded version. And now we're going through another iteration of the platform where we're integrating AI and blockchain and all that. But we didn't start with that. We started with the kind of like the cheap version that was still solving a problem, and kind of kept testing as we went forward. And the reality is that most startups fail. The majority of ideas and projects fall apart. And taking this kind of scientific mindset with it can allow you to actually be much more objective and evidence-based with your approach. And you're all I'm going to assume everyone's familiar with this, but if not, this is where a minimum viable product comes in. So it's the most basic version of your product with just enough features to get feedback. But I also love the concept of minimal lovable products. So it's just a version that can please your customers just enough, or your students just enough, with the least amount of effort. And I think it's absolutely critical that you start like this. So don't assume anything will work, even if your intuition is telling you that. Test it and actually experiment with it. Above all, I urge all of you to involve educators and students in your product development. Nothing is more frustrating to schools and teachers than when entrepreneurs or innovators or corporates go in and develop a solution without involving the teachers that are actually in the classroom, or without involving the students who are actually learning it. In fact, I was just at an educational conference, and this was the number one complaint by people in the ecosystem, is that, a lot of founders that are passionate, they haven't been in the classroom. And I say this because it's not just about the product itself, but the best way to learn about your go-to marketing strategy is from the teachers themselves, who know what the school sales cycle is, who know who the decision makers are, who know how much free time students and teachers have. These are all factors that will shape your offering. So absolutely speak to them, survey them, gather data from them, have focus groups, have them part of your advisory board, especially if you don't have education experience yourself. Ensure that you're involving all these different stakeholders. You'd be shocked how much it accelerates everything, and how it can sway you away from ideas that you thought were a really good idea. And here's some questions I urge you to ask them when you're speaking to them or when you're serving to them. First, what is the business model? Will anyone pay for this? That's like, if you're building a for-profit, that's a very valuable question to ask yourself. Next is, are you solving a real problem? Is your solution in demand? Like, does this, whatever you're solving, is it actually something teachers or students think, I wish I had? And you have no way of knowing that until you speak to them. And you know what? There may be existing solutions out there that are already doing this. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Next is, how can you make your offering or product as easy as possible for educators to deploy? Remember that school teachers are completely overwhelmed with admin work and everything else. So you need to design something that is the least amount of effort for them. And that's what we try to do. All our programs are completely offline, self-paced. We do all the reviewing before the certification. We design, we lead all the sessions ourselves. And we still find that just as simple as asking the teachers to spread the word is a lot of work for them. So just something to keep in mind. Again, a reminder of keeping in mind what business or revenue model will work for you in the industry. Definitely look into existing solutions. Later on, we'll look at the entire landscape of ed tech, but you want to try to be as innovative as possible. And finally, get feedback from the users. Before any school actually buys in, officially, they're going to ask you, have you done this before? What was the feedback? And the more testimonials or beta user experience you have, the better. So one of the last questions I have for you is, where do you fit in the landscape at large? And this is what I'd like to share with you. So this report is by Novartis, essentially what they did, and this is just the first page, by the way, they go into every single segment individually and analyze it, is they basically segmented the entire education/edtech space into these sections. So you have create, which are kind of where we fit in. It's the curriculum creators, the knowledge creators. Manage, so this is institutional management, school management. They're widely responsible for releasing the admin burden from schools. Discover, so these are platforms that are kind of like marketplaces for financing, for admissions, for MOOCs. Connect, so social learning is a big one, social platforms for learning and for collaboration on problems and projects. Next is experience. You know, we know that learning shouldn't just be about information, but about doing things, and more platforms are coming up to host projects and challenges and AR, VR, and so on. Learning platforms, so this doesn't necessarily have to be online. It can be like boot camps, workshops, massive open online courses. Credentialing is another big area. We're seeing a lot of credentialing now happen on blockchain technology, badging. You know, if we're talking about teaching young minds 21st century skills, credentialing that is very different than credentialing your traditional degree. So that there is a requirement for a lot of innovation on that front. And then there is advanced. So this is beyond higher education. It's about lifelong learning, career planning, hiring, and so on. So this is the entire kind of map of all the different categories you could fall into. So try to think about where you fit in. You know, maybe you can use this as inspiration of how you want to evolve your idea. And the report by Novartis is, I think, like a 20, 30-page report where you look at each and every one of this. It's also a great place to go if you're trying to look into the competition. So if you want to know who else is doing what I'm doing, or who do I compete against, this has a great database of all the different major big player educational companies that are coming up. So yeah, that brings me to the end of my presentation. I know I might have some time for Q&A. I'll let Lars decide on that. But you know, if you ever want to reach out to me with further questions, you know, here's my email. If you feel like you also potentially want to partner with what we're doing, or take Academy programs to your school or country or whatever, you know, feel free to reach out. I'd love to share more details. But for now, I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Thank you very much, Raya. And let's take questions now from anybody who might have questions to Raya. That was a lot to digest here, Raya, and a lovely thought-provoking approach. Okay, yep.
I've got a quick one. Raya, toward the end, you were talking about what will make this really easy for educators to use. And I'm really interested in learning assistance, learning systems, learning whatever that other than educators can use, that families, kids, learners, basically just learners and their helpers can grab. How does that change what you would create and how you approach it?
It's a great question. So obviously it depends on the exact solution. So I think there's two ways to kind of answer that. One is to focus on how you actually deploy it. So one of the challenges we have is when we go to market, when we kind of market to a school, we have lots of different offerings, right? Each one has its own kind of pricing. And the advice we were given is to just package everything into one. Make it as quick as possible for whoever you're talking to be able to go to their school principal and say, this is it, this is how much it costs, this is what we do. So from a marketing side, the best advice I can give is, you know, no matter how complex your product is, package it into one thing, keep it simple. Into actually the actual product design and development, I think, again, like think about how much time it would take, let's say, for a teacher to have to update the database. Now, one of the best products I've seen, and maybe your schools use this, but some of the private schools in Dubai have started using it for their kind of younger students. Maybe as parents, you know, when your kids come to school and you're like, oh, what did you learn today? They're like, I don't know. And you want to know what they'd spend all day doing. So there's a couple of startups that are doing this, where they've created an app where the teacher or the helper can create a picture throughout the lesson and say, you know, your son Sam worked on this today. Here's a picture of his classwork. And just like tap. It's kind of like a social media platform, sends it directly to the parents. And it's quick, it's easy, it's just a picture, you know, type the message and send it in. And the same platform can be used by schools to communicate, so teachers to communicate with the parents. So you can directly kind of message this teacher in the app and say, hey, you know, I have an inquiry about the homework today. So I think, you know, in those cases, it's more about the database, the interface and how it's designed. Anything that requires data entry, I would think of ways you could digitize that. There's some really cool solutions now. I recently saw a product that's powered by Sana Labs that automatically digitizes students' responses to an exam paper. So they have a special type of exam paper and a special type of pen. So as they're solving a math equation, it's digitizing it. And then an AI engine is actually analyzing the way they solve the problem. And the benefit here is that it saves the teachers a lot of time of having to manually enter data, which then gets analyzed by an AI. It just digitizes it automatically. So those are just some examples to think about of what solutions in the ecosystem are.
Awesome. Other questions before we let Raya jump off to prepare for the new day in very few hours, actually?
Lars, I have a quick comment related to some things that Raya has said, if I may.
Yes.
Raya, you pointed out the nature of disruption is to go for 10x, not 10%, and you know, making sure the solutions are helping the educators and the users, etc. And the nature of disruption also includes recognizing that disruption is chaotic, and there's going to be a lot of change management involved. And in the implementation of the solutions, it's important to keep in mind that there are those who will react and resist the solution, who benefit from the status quo, and it's worth analyzing that and seeing where some of the resistance might come from.
It's a very good point. It really varies from country to country, I find. So in the UAE, with all the private schools, it's a very largely private, well-funded kind of ecosystem. The schools themselves, the principals themselves are often forward thinking. Here I find there's two sources of resistance. One is test scores. This testing industry, the exam industry dominates what schools focus on. Because, you know, people still expect better grades and better report cards, there's very little bandwidth left with new ideas. Teachers are still trying to teach to the grades. They're still trying to kind of keep that industry happy. So that's the huge challenge, is telling them it's okay if your kids' grades come down if they're actually gaining these skills instead. And this is something I personally relate to, because I was a young entrepreneur. I founded my first company in high school, and my grades started to go down. I was learning all these new things, and I was lucky to be in an ecosystem where people were understanding. But I saw that not a lot of parents and teachers were as understanding as mine. And that's the second thing. Parents are often a huge resistance to this. They are, obviously, because of how much they love their children, they're afraid to take a risk with their education. They're afraid of the kind of social status aspect of it, you know, the universities they go to or the grades they get. And that too can be tricky. We're actually working on a book right now, a guide for parents on all these things and what parents can do at home to give their kids an exponential education. Because we found that we really need to change mindsets about how parents think about this if we're going to allow for adoption for ideas like ours.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you, Jabin, for asking.
Yeah.
Any other questions to Raya?
I have one, Raya. Thank you for sharing a little bit about our academy. You know, when we're talking about shifting mindsets, it can take a lot of time. What are some ways that you measure yourself in terms of success? Like, what is something that you look for and say, okay, what we're doing is actually working out?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's very hard to do that when you're talking about soft skills, because they're not as easy to quantify as kind of content knowledge, right? For me, it's really the students' feedback. Like, we recently finished a weekend boot camp on existential intelligence, which is all about asking big questions and seeking big answers, like who are we? Where did we come from? What is our purpose in life? It's a question schools don't answer, we really should. And the testimonials that came in after were just so touching. You know, so one of the students said it was the best learning experience of their life. Others said that she thought that she was the only one that had those questions. So it was nice to interact with other kids that were asking those kind of profound questions. And, you know, like many, many great topics of the different themes we covered. And the feedback was super positive, and 100% of the students said they would participate in another of our future programs. And throughout the sessions, a lot of them were awe-inspired and excited and engaged. And for me, that's the most important metric. It's what keeps me going, is how, seeing what it does to them. Like, I've had workshops with students where afterwards they were like, we're actually going to work on this project, you know, similar to what you guys are doing. They got inspired. They're like, okay, we're going to solve this problem. We're going to bring a team together, and we're actually going to go about it, do something in the world. And so for us, the main measure is the impact the students go about to create. One of the things I didn't mention is on our platform, we also host projects and challenges for the students. So for instance, we have curriculum on moonshot thinking. We also have a competition on moonshot thinking where we actually fund some of the moonshot ideas. And, you know, the outcomes of that is, I think, an excellent way to measure how well the students are learning and acquiring these new skills, mindsets, and values.
Yeah, well, thank you for answering that. I think it's great that it's student-centered in terms of metrics, because I think over time they can themselves be your evangelists and promote your ideas.
Exactly. That's what we already have. We have a few student ambassadors, as we call them, who help us spread the word and help us, you know, in future events, kind of let their friends know. And as you know, word of mouth is the best marketing, and it only works if you're doing well. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Is there one last question to Raya before we thank Raya for staying up half of the night to be with us? No. Okay. Raya had shared her email already in the last slide. There it is. Raya is an amazing continuous support of Educate for Life and part of our ecosystem, and our collaboration just keeps growing. And feel free to reach out to Raya. There's so much more to discuss, to explore, to learn about in this wonderful world that we are going to redesign in terms of the future of education. So Raya, thank you again so much for being with us, for disrupting our way of thinking, and for challenging us and offering some challenges that we can keep working on. Thank you, Raya.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you all for all of your incredible work. I think happy to support, because I want to see more people solve these problems in education. So I'm very inspired by how everyone's been spending their extra free time on such projects. I'm very inspired, and wishing everyone the best of luck.
Thank you very much.
Okay, bye, everyone.
We'll let you go, and have a wonderful day.
Bye, Raya.
Bye, Jackie.
Bye. For the rest of us, we are going to spend the next 10 minutes or so to get a brief introduction to the rest of the ideas that we started introducing before Raya joined. Please, let's keep it at maximum 2 minutes per idea, so we can finish almost on time. I'd like also to just give a brief introduction to the rest of the sprint, but that's going to be very short. While I'm starting to share my screen again for the next ones that want to introduce ideas, I'm just sharing the link here to Sway, and where you see the ideas. Feel free to go in there and provide also your feedback to the other teams. If not now, then in the coming days and weeks. So let me just bring up Sway again, and then we'll dive briefly into like a maximum 2-minute introduction of each of the remaining ideas, but only if there's a representative from the idea present on the call. I want to hear if Melissa or somebody else from the team is here to talk about emotion and brain analysis. Seems not to be the case. Okay, but we surely have the SME team present here. So I look very much forward to hear from Klaus and or Peter to introduce to us the online platform for lifelong learning in SMEs. Over to you, gentlemen.
Actually, Gabriel is the one who will start. Are you
Okay,
there, Gabriel?
I can start. Hi, everybody. I don't know, Lars, maybe do you think that I can share very quickly my screen so we can share with you our ideas? I think it will be much easier to show them because we had a, let me put my presentation.
Yeah, of course. So you should be able to share your screen now.
I'm doing right now.
Awesome.
So everybody's seeing?
Yes, we see your screen.
Okay, so what we prepare here is just a very brief presentation of the ideas. I think with 2 minutes it's more enough. And we are going to present the ideas that we are still working, not all of them that they are on the SWI platform. So for everybody to know, we are the SMEs and we are focused, our MTP is focused on democratized adult lifelong learning globally. So our main target is adult learning. So we think that adults are usually left over in this process of continuing education. So that's where we are focusing on adults in this case. And here it's, as you can see, we have the big idea. Our umbrella idea is to create this worldwide community of experts, trainers, users, organizations to exchange experiences and tools to engage in a lifelong learning journey for adults. So that's our main idea. And the rest of the ideas that are here are under this umbrella. So that the idea is these 4 ideas will support the bigger one. That's how we did it. So we have these here 4 main ideas. At the end, we are thinking about having an online platform to engage SMEs managers and their employees to promote the adult lifelong learning. So as you can see, we are focusing on adults and SMEs as a way of reaching those adults. So it's not just adults, but are adults that are usually on the market work, that they are working through an SME. So then we have another one, is that we are focusing more on the content creation. So curate and co-create learning materials specifically designed for adults. Our hypothesis there is usually that the materials that we are using right now is not designed having an adult life learning in mind. So the idea is to have that and design materials and curate materials that are already there, but for specific targets. And then another idea is to create a network of partner organizations worldwide that work on this field, that could be a channel to roll out training programs when face-to-face is needed for specific this target. We don't think that completely online learning is the way to go. We think that we should have a blend between online learning and some in-presence face-to-face learning. So for develop that type of face-to-face learning in a global perspective, in a global scope, the idea is to create this network of organizations that can help us develop and deliver this type of trainings. And the last one is to create, embedded on this platform, having a marketplace where to connect usually all the trainers that we can have today, the training providers, and the managers that requires this type of services. So that's just a more marketplace idea where to connect these 2 parts, the demand and the supply. So this very quickly and briefly ideas. I don't know, Klaus and Peter, if you want to add something more about these ideas.
Well, thanks, Gabriel. Just perhaps to add that a bit about the why here, because I mean, why focus on SMEs? Yes, precisely. That's at least part of the statistics. At least the research for Europe and the States shows that I mean, this almost all businesses are SMEs in terms of numbers. And in terms of employment, they also have a large proportion of the employment and also value creation. But they are an underserved segment because we also have data, certainly for Denmark in this case. I think it's valid for many countries in Europe that the budgets for training for adults in vocational training are much smaller than any of the other budgets. So they need to be helped, and this is why we focus on SMEs.
Yeah, actually about 50% of the population in Denmark, and it is so in quite a lot of countries, is between 25 and 65 years. That is people who are in work. But in Denmark, only less than 10% of the educational budget is being spent on these 50%. And the adults are in danger now, as we know, because their skills are being outdated very quickly. And this will not only result in unemployment, but we will also have a lack of skills necessary for the future. It may also lead to social upheaval because people will be lost. We see already some signs of that. These adults who are supposed to learn something have a lot of barriers to actually do it. There's no custom for them to learn. There's no time, there's no incentive. But in the SMEs, demand for learning, demand for skills will be growing. And this learning then will be demand driven, not pushed to grown-ups. So those are some of the background. This is some of the background why we are looking at this.
One thing that I'm just was
last point that we need to move on. Yeah.
No, the only thing that just to add is like seeing the Raya's presentation. I keep a little bit worried about how moonshot and how our ideas are, but just to share some type of concerns. But that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Which is the point of a disrupt workshop and try to disrupt our own approach, our own thinking, and our own ideas. So wonderful to have this experience, and thank you for sharing that, and thank you for sharing your idea. I look forward to be on the feedback call with the team here start of next week. So thank you very much to the SME team. And now we need to move on in the interest of time to the next team, which is, I see Cosmin's name all over it. Cosmin, are you still on the call?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am, Lars.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Fine, fine. Let me put also the video. Okay. Actually, we had more ideas on Sway, but after revisiting them and according to your instruction in stage 6, we decided to stay only with 2 of them. And due to timing concerns, I will only speak about one of them, which is that we intend to create a platform for high schoolers, so 14 to 18 years old, where they can learn to do practical stuff, whatever that practical stuff at that age means. We test the hypothesis. We had about 60 responses, and more than 90% were positive towards such a platform, where they could learn from each other or from entrepreneurs or from us at the faculty, how to do a vlog, how to organize a party, how to do a music band, how to create an event, whatever at that age is important as a practical project to develop their entrepreneurial skills and mindset, they could find on this platform. And this is where we are concentrating now. The other idea we want to explore in the call with you next week, it's a one-year BBA, an unaccredited one-year BBA, but we'll talk about it then.
Looking very much forward to that conversation. I have a lot of ideas actually, but
okay.
that's for a longer session separately, like every team will do. And I will probably see you on Friday as well, Cosmin, I hope.
I will not be in Bucharest, unfortunately. That's why I did not participate in it. Yeah.
Okay, okay. But see you in Zoom land, definitely.
Yes.
Discuss the consolidation of your ideas at this stage. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Cosmin.
Thank you.
Let's just scroll down the list here, and we're getting to Charlotte and her wonderful warm-up team. Charlotte actually submitted a video as per the assignment, but I would love to have Charlotte to give us a brief introduction here in person to your work.
Yeah, I'm here. Could you allow me to share my screen? We also have like 3 slides, super short. And,
absolutely.
We invite everybody to watch our video, and it will be available when you decide to release it. So can I share my screen? Yep. So if I move a little bit. So hi everyone, my name is Charlotte Vider, and I'm very happy to present you the work of the warm-up team. So if you want to know a bit who is this warm-up team, there is Magdalena, she's based in Miami, there's Sophie, she's based in Melbourne, and Elena, she's based in Copenhagen, and myself, I'm based in Billund, Denmark. So our MTP is leveraging the local heritage for a connected, prosperous global village. And our users, actually, we are planning to target women in rural villages and also people aiming at being happy for a meaningful life. If you look at the happiness definition in the Ismail book, there are several key problems we would like to solve, like lack of economic opportunities for these women, low literacy level, and also a risk of cultural heritage lost. And actually we see a lot of opportunities to connect this woman with their local knowledge to a marketplace, be able to leapfrog the fact that they have no literacy and no digital literacy, and make sure to capture the great valuable data they have about their life. So if I just focus on our ID, we would like to transform women into content creators as their first step into the digital world. And the idea to do that would to provide a device to this woman in order to be able to video record their life. Like they wake up at 6 a.m., they prepare the bread, they go in the forest to get the wood and all of that. And through a software analysis, as you can see on the picture on the right, we could get some data about what are the main tasks they are doing, what are the key issues they have to face. We could also leverage the power of community to share these key problems and key pain points of these women and launch, for example, some innovation contests to say, how could we help them, for example, to save time in their day by better managing the water or the energy part. And so targeting a full global community to help and involve them in some challenges. Through this camera or virtual reality or augmented reality to be defined, we will be able to record the cultural heritage that then could be available on platforms like Wikipedia or Google Earth or whatever. And based on this data, we will maybe be able to better define what would be the best services we could provide to this woman, and also explore some revenue options, because we believe that this kind of data could be marketable, and hopefully the price of the devices will completely drop. So then if it's available, we can really give it to so many people. So that's the key idea of our project. And we did a more detailed video with the business plan and everything. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. Great and inspiring introduction to your initiative, and thank you to the whole team behind it. Great. Let's continue. I'm just looking through the list here, and we have Mahesh showing up now with advanced social and emotional learning. Mahesh, would you like to share something, or should I share something here?
No, I'm happy to share a little bit. The concept for the idea is, it started out when I was volunteering at my daughter's school. She's 8 years old. And I realized that the way instruction's put out there is it's very focused on one type of subject, like, hey, now we're going to learn math. And then after that, we're going to learn science. And then after that, we're going to do some playtime or something like that. And so, you know, I thought that was a little lopsided in how the world is aligned. As an adult, it seemed like a lot of the things that we're trying to learn in the workforce and just in our lives in general are things that we already knew as children when we were really young. And so that was kind of the inspiration for this disconnect. And the challenges of tomorrow are going to be largely things that are not really defined. You're not going to have a problem and being able to engineer a solution for it. And so a lot of it is going to be having to really collaborate, share ideas, and do some experimentation. And part of doing that is doesn't work in the traditional classroom. So our concept was to develop some kind of a toolkit that integrates immersive learning and shifts the paradigm of how, in terms of education, when you're learning you know, literacy concepts, instead of learning about how, you want to think about, you know, why and what. And so that's the concept. So the idea is to have a modular approach that are multidisciplinary. So you can design and work on a challenge as a team. And that fosters the ideas of listening to other people's ideas, learning to negotiate some things, present your point of view, and a lot of the social and emotional skill sets that they're going to be using as adults. And that's kind of the idea. I think initially the target phase is at the younger generation of kids. And I think as you get into places like middle school and high school, there's going to be less helping from the teachers. It's going to be more exploration where they can design their own problems to solve for. But I think initially the teacher's role shifts from giving instruction to help nurture relationships and help the little ones kind of navigate. And rather than delivering content, it's going to be more about framing questions and putting some guardrails and boundaries around their experimentation and learn them that way.
Awesome. Mahesh, thank you very much for the introduction here.
Thank you.
It's a consistent topic, right, that comes up in almost every initiative. So it makes so much sense, and we have to do something about this. So thank you for showing the way here on one approach to do this. I look very much forward also to discuss this one in more detail on a feedback call. When we can get that scheduled. So thank you very much. Do you have other ideas to present, Mahesh, or your team?
I don't think I have any others. My team's based out of Australia. I think they had a couple others. We've been just trying to communicate and find some common times. We've been playing tag and not had enough time. I think there was one or two more from, I think her name is Melissa. I haven't actually met her yet, but I think there's one or two other ideas that I saw briefly out there.
Yeah, and I saw Melissa actually on, I think Melissa, are you here? I see your name on the screen. Okay, maybe Melissa is not able to.
I am here.
Yes, hey Melissa.
How are you? I think we've also got Kate, Esther. Have they jumped off?
I think I saw Kate earlier. I'm not sure if she's still here.
Kate had to drop off. She had to go to work. So that's what happened.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah. Melissa, would you like to introduce your ideas to us just briefly?
Yeah, okay, cool. So the first idea is our new school, which is a well-being school. So what we do is we go into your traditional school. We take over that school for a week. We train the teachers, and we have an overarching project that they will be working on, but it's mainly focused on teaching the teachers about well-being. So getting the children to meditate, self-soothe, deal with trauma, being creative, etc. So coming from that place that we're building better humans. So that's one idea that we have. Then from that, once we've gone into the school for a week, we then have an online portal and community for the teachers to take advantage of, as well as the parents of the children, so that it can be long-lasting change within that school. So that's idea number one. Are you fine for me to go on to number two, Lars?
Sure. Which one? This one?
The next one is Remarkable's Prize.
Yeah.
Which I think you guys just spoke of.
Yeah.
Correct. And then the third one is the brain bands, which will read. There's a guy here in Australia that has created brain bands that monitor how the children are feeling. So they could wear them potentially in classrooms and incorporate them in different environments, so that children or teachers are able to measure how the children are performing. So are they feeling overwhelmed? Is what they're being taught easy for that student? And then they can cater individualized learning for those people. That's it in a nutshell.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Melissa, for driving this forward. A lot of important things that we need to support here, all of us. So looking forward to the next steps on developing.
Thank you very much.
Let's schedule a feedback call on this, of course, as well, and discuss all this in more detail, how we can take this to the next step.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melissa and team. And then next one up would be Edwin. And Edwin, I know your ideas are not submitted here, but I wanted to hear you and your ideas. So please take the floor and introduce us to the work that you're doing in the sprint.
Okay, yeah, sure. Just, can I share my screen?
Yes. Let me just make co-host here.
Great. So.
Yeah, you can share your screen now, Edwin.
Sure. So, can you see now my screen?
Yes, we see it now.
Okay, great, perfect. So the idea here is that, well, with the fast changes that we are living in the 21st century, humanity need some kind of rehab to unlearn a lot of things. The process is like a rehab because we need to change habits. We need to change a lot of things. So we start studying a lot of rehabs methodologies. And this is part of the first idea. The first one was, we saw that even things like the socialism came after a group of people getting together at least once a week to talk about these new kinds of ideas. This happened also with other kind of rehab methodologies that have been really getting very good results. And even churches, mega churches grow a lot with the small groups. So they call I love this phrase that says small groups was extraordinary vehicle of commitment. So the idea is to find a community to keep accountability, some kind of masterminds groups to keep accountability. So we call something like the idea is some kind of the YPO for EXO, online communities for exponential growth. So this is the idea, to put some challenges and to set, once a week online with some kind of accountability. The second idea is after this, we saw that most of the education right now is so focused on content that is it's letting behind what is really important, that is practice by doing and teach others. Is the more efficient way to learn is with these two. And most of the education is based on how we learn, how we teach, what are we going to teach, or this and that. But we live in the era with more information available. I think that what we need to go is to move from a content perspective or of education to a challenge perspective of education. So this is the idea. So the idea is it's like this, like, hey, this is a challenge. The challenge is you have 2 weeks to find your why. You're going to have different micro challenge to get the right one. And with your peers at the end, they are going to qualify if you pass or not the level. So you can move forward. So it could be something like exotrends, find your why, or MTP, do something that people want, like the sprint methodology, or something like scale your impact to 1 million, something like that, like going through different steps. But here the idea is, I don't care if you know a lot with this course. I don't care. Did you pass the challenge or not? It's that simple. So we call something like a social game to develop X organizations. Something like a Duolingo for EXO, a social Duolingo for EXO, kind of a game. And what we are seeing here is, we saw that with the Singularity and X organizations, I'm really involved in the community. I have been really involved in Singularity and the EXO community, and I really love what we are doing. But I see this. We have the scalable and the not scalable, the idea and the action. Sorry, I'm saying that it's a little bit in Spanish, but something like Singularity is doing a great job saying like, hey, we should impact 1 billion people. Okay, but 1 billion people cannot pay for Singularity courses or cannot attend to Singularity courses. It's ideas and not scalable. At least for now. I'm sure they are going to move to another direction in the next years, but this is the vision. The GSP, the new GSP of Singularity, it has like, it's more action, but the cost is like $60,000 that also 1 billion people cannot pay for this kind of program. So it's not so much scalable. The courses, I have been working here in Growth Institute, and we have the course of Exponential Organization, and it's part of an idea and part of action. Most of the people don't take action. They have a lot of content, high quality content, but few action. With the sprints, we are having a lot of action. It's amazing, but it's not so much scalable. So the question here is, how can we do this scalable? That's exactly what we want to do here. Like, someone has to bet for the real 1 billion people or impact, the big scalability. So that's the idea. And the mindset has to do a lot with this, with what Margaret Mead says, that never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed people can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. And our moonshot is this, like, what about focus on help 1,000 projects that each can impact 1 million people. There we have the 1 billion people. Something like a first milestone, like something that we have in mind. And for this, we have we have some three ways of monetize this, and it will be awesome to hear your feedback. Is the first one could be something like, hey, this course has a price like something like 1,000 or something like that. Okay, but in that case, I have been working here in Growth Institute, and around 30% of the people that pay 2,000 for the course of Salim is not finishing. Around 30%. And very few people is taking action. A lot of people can finish, but not taking action. So I think there is a big gap there. So one hypothesis, the second one is, what about doing something like, hey, this is a game to develop an extra organization with 10 challenges. If you pass the 10 challenges, you will get your money back. So each week we are going to give you Monday the challenge, Friday you are going to present, and you're going to rank the other peers, and they are going to rank you. If they if you pass among 4 stars or something like that, you will get a percentage of your full money back. So the idea is to incentivize action. We are not sure if money is a good way to incentivize action, but we want to test it, or it's one idea. On the other is make it free and focus the teams in a big problem like global warming, like bring a lot of groups and try to monetize from data in that case, or organizations that are seeing that we are helping bringing some solutions to a big problem like this. So these are the 3 ways that we are looking on this. And the third idea is this one. We are seeing a big problem. Like if you watch a pop artist video music, look how many views it has, like 100 million. It's amazing. But if we saw the data about something really important, like the fourth industrial revolution, the number is much less. So the problem with this is that very few people is aware of the fourth industrial revolution and what is happening with the exponential trends. But it's going to impact everyone. So the idea here is to create a massive awakening. And we think like an exponential think tank. So the idea here, sorry, I don't know what's happening. Please give me a second, I'm sorry. Okay, I have it here. Okay, the idea here is, I have been collaborating, last year I collaborate with the founder of Wikipedia, with Jimmy Wales and his team, about a project called Wiki Tribune. Can you see my screen again?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, the idea is Wiki Tribune, it's a media that works like Wikipedia to help solve the fake news problem. They launch a crowdfunding campaign. I help in the Spanish crowdfunding campaign. We get about $500,000 in both campaigns. And with this, we started this media. But I saw a problem and I pitched them like, hey, there's a problem. I see a problem here because Wiki Tribune, like Wikipedia, is based on text, and the new trend on the internet is video. So we are seeing that video is growing exponentially. And the difference between Wikipedia and Wiki Tribune is that in encyclopedia, timing is not so relevant, but in the news, timing is very, very relevant. So that's why I propose this concept, or we propose this concept called Wiki Interviews. So what's the idea? The idea is to have a main question about a topic like, how can we solve the global warming problem? We have a moderator, we bring a panel of experts, and then we have, the idea is we use a AI technology called Otter that we can transcribe in real time what these people are saying, and put this video on text. So then we can invite the wiki community to start bringing more research on this. And the idea is to have the chat for the wiki, what we call the wiki journalist, and to end with a wiki document on this, of course, with a resume, because if not, it's going to be very, very big. And with this, we can have a lot of people engage on really important topics, like news, but with people collaborating in news, and learning, and a lot of people moving forward with things that could be impactful for the world. So we developed this mockup. You can see here in the exomockup.com, and this is a proposal we are also working on. So that's it.
Many interesting ideas here. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for presenting these, Edwin. Great to see them, and I look forward to support and provide feedback for the next steps. But we're dealing here with a team of exponential thinkers and doers already. So I hope I can provide some feedback that can be useful. So thank you very much again. I just wanted to ask out in the open here, is there anybody who would like to present who has not presented yet? Nope. No. Awesome. We have been presenting the initiatives that have been posted in Sway, with the exception of some where the team have not been able to join today. And in the coming weeks, these ideas are going to evolve. They're going to change. Maybe some will consolidate, uh, and hopefully everybody will be coming back with the next revision of your ideas, your next presentations, and also we are going to ask you for a video. Some have already provided a video presentation of your ideas, and some have not. So this is a next step, and we are going to share with you on the platform exactly the next steps as part of the next assignments. Let me just share a few things about the next steps here on the screen before we wrap up for today. First of all, it's been great to see all the ideas in the Sway platform. Please provide feedback to the ideas, and also in general provide feedback about the experience of working with our different platforms, our community platform, the Mighty Networks platform, and Sway, which we use for the ideation. We want to keep learning. We want to keep providing even better tools for our collaborative work to design the future of education. So please keep the feedback coming. As I said in the beginning of the show today, we are right in the middle of our sprint now. We are halfway through the sprint. We have put the awake and the ideate stage behind us, but that doesn't mean that's over. Actually, the ideation will continue. Your research will continue in a build, measure, learn iteration that just keeps going. The next step, which starts on the 1st of April officially, is the solve stage. The solve is where we start to build more mature ideas. We make sure that we validate our hypothesis much more and much better, and then we start to build the first prototypes. It can be minimal viable products or minimal lovable products, as we heard Raya talking about. And we're going to experience the next level of type of feedback, the new quality level of feedback that we can get when we build a prototype, build something visual that users can touch and feel or can try out. So the feedback to you will be at a whole different level. We're going to work on this in the next stages here. You will get all the guidance you need through the assignments that are being published, and then we will work our way up to the launch workshop, which is in May the 7th. And to those of you who are a bit behind the sprint schedule, don't worry at all. There's plenty of opportunity to catch up, and you don't have to all have the same ambition level. Some are really investing a lot of time and effort into the sprint. That's amazing, and that's definitely needed if we want to change education for sure and for real. But it's absolutely fine also to join this, to learn about the process and to propose ideas that others may want to join. So you might want to build a team during the rest of the process and continue to work with them after the sprint. There are many ways to take advantage of this sprint and to get the most out of the sprint process. You don't have to be working in the same pace and with the same intensity. And please feel free to reach out for guidance and support on each of your sprint initiatives. I'm very happy to say also that I'm being joined by some a couple of coaches from our OpenExo ecosystem that are going to help you in your teams to coach your ideas to even more exponentiality, take it all to the next level. And I'm also excited to be meeting all the teams in separate feedback sessions as soon as we can. Make sure to schedule me quickly, please, and then we'll dive into deeper and more detailed feedback on your ideas. After this session, I hope you will have time to do some reflection, consider next steps for your ideas. I'm sure you already got inspiration from hearing about each other's ideas. Make sure to reach out to the other teams if you want to have conversations, if you want to consider consolidating ideas, working together, or maybe help each other in different ways. This is what a community is for as well. So we have another half sprint in front of us. Generally, we know from experience that about 75% of all new learning that we acquire during a sprint happens in the second part of the sprint. This might sound unbelievable right now, but it keeps coming up as the outcome. 75% of all the learning we acquire during a sprint happens in the second part of the sprint. So stay with us and keep working on this, and you will find a tremendous amount of new learning, new discoveries, and new achievements just around the corner. Let's work together to make that happen, and keep using Sway for feedback. You will see soon that we will be opening up for a next round of ideas to be submitted. That will be a new revision of current ideas. It will be for new ideas. So it's like wiping the white screen and starting over again. And you're going to see and experience the power of doing these iterations. Then I'm closing with this particular slide. It's for me, there are a lot of memories connected to this slide, and you may wonder what this is all about. It's a power tool from DeWalt. What does that have to do with anything? The thing is, I was part of doing a transformation sprint like we're doing now with Black & Decker in the US, and they own the DeWalt brand. And they were trying to figure out what's the next thing in the exponential world. after power tools, or how can they create exponential value to people who are using power tools like drills and so on. And one thing that came up during the sprint was that there are actually communities on our planet, and I'm still surprised about it, people who are tattooing their favorite power tools on their body. That's how passionate about they are about the power tools. And I think it's quite amazing, right? We have no idea what other people are really passionate about, but there are communities who get together simply around a common passion, in this case of power tools. They tattoo their favorite power tools on their bodies. And we're telling Black and Decker, hey guys, why are you not leveraging this community, right? They would love to be ideating around new products, new services, test your things. And obviously building community is always an option for any one of you in any of your ideas. It's very important to build that supporting network around what we try to do. So that's the closing remark for today, for the Disrupt workshop. I hope it's been useful. I hope it's been inspiring and disruptive. And I look very much forward to meet you all on the feedback calls that we will schedule with each of you and talk in more detail. So with that, I want to thank all of you and say my goodbyes, and I have a plane to catch. So see you all very soon. Thank you for today.